back once again. Vin and Dave's Destination Unknown. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, or as they say in the parlance of the day, wazza. Oh, wait, that's not the parlance anymore? No? Okay.
That is the parlance of a day, but it's not the parlance of today. I think that's more appropriate for our last two shows of Ancient Technologies.
Yes.
Today, though, we are doing... You say it, because I don't even know what it is. You surprised me with this one.
Yeah, this was a surprise. The Silurian Hypothesis.
Never heard of it. You would not tell me anything about it. I refrained from looking it up.
So, Silurians were a intelligent reptilian species from Doctor Who.
I think I remember these. I didn't remember that they were called Silurians.
That was from many years ago. I think it was during maybe Tom Baker's run.
That makes sense. And I kind of remember what these things look like. I do recall that. This reptile race. So, okay. All right, I'm with it. So what's the hypothesis? Or do you want to say that right now?
Well, first, let's talk about wine.
Okay, yes. Yeah. So this is the second week of Bitcoin Jerry French and his contribution. So what I wanted to do this time was I wanted to find two good wines. This is the Francis Coppola Director's Cut. It's a 2015 Sonoma County, right?
2014.
2014.
Even older.
Wait, is the other one a 2014 too? Because I wanted to get... Oh, no. Did I blow this experiment?
2014.
Okay. Sonoma County, right?
Yes.
And that one is appropriately named for us. Oh, no, that's not the Liberty one. That's the Benziger family winery. But this Francis Coppola, the Director's Cut, I had actually toured that winery. He lives there. He actually lives. He's got a house in the back. The inside of it is a Francis Ford Coppola museum in part of it. And then, of course, they do the tours, the gift shop, and they make the wines. But it's the oldest. It's like the original winery in that region. The guy who, I guess, created California wine country was this Norwegian sea captain who had been all over the place.
Wow. And
somehow settled down in that valley, in sort of the Napa Valley region. He believed he was an avid, obviously, like wine connoisseur, and he had been all over the world. And he believed that when he saw that region, he was like, I think we can do wine here. Like, I think it'll actually work. And so he built this chateau that is unbelievable. I guess it had to be in the 1800s that he did it. It's just a really cool tour if you're able to do it. I was lucky. It's kind of a little bit difficult, I think, to get on the sort of VIP tour with the tasting and everything. There's like a long waiting list, but I was up there, as I was telling you, for the bottles for my vodka when I was doing my bottle deal. The company that makes the bottles, it's a French company called Savor Glass, and they make all the wine bottles for the wineries and whatnot. They're one of the biggest manufacturers, so they were able to hook it up, and it was just really, really amazing. So, but what I wanted to do was same variety, same year, same region, and then we can really see. So far, this Coppola is excellent.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, this is not their highest end, but it's like pretty high up there. Like their highest end, you can get it in wine shops, and then you can obviously get it at the winery, and it's super good. But
so Jerry, nice choice, man.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm glad. Can't go wrong. Well, you gotta go with what you know. You know what I mean? And I remember, like, I went on the tasting there, and I was highly impressed by everything. So this is excellent. Cool. So thank you again, Bitcoin Jerry French.
Indeed.
Okay, so Silurian Hypothesis.
Yes.
And you told me that not only was it about this particular topic, but that you had some dreams.
Oh, dude, I had some freaky dreams last night.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right, so the first, it was kind of a dream sequence. It was like they were all interrelated. I remember two of them fairly vividly. On the first one, I was chilling with Vladimir Putin. And I'm not sure, I mean, maybe we had just been riding horses, topless, or maybe we had been hunting bear with a knife. I don't recall what manly activity we were engaged in. I'm sure it was very manly.
Of course, it's Putin. Yes,
it's Putin. So anyway, while we're hanging out, he says, "Hey, do you want a fake ID?" And I'm like, "Oh, sure, why not?"
Yeah.
So he brings
Putin,
his
when Putin offers you a fake ID, you take it.
Yeah, and you figure it's probably going to be pretty good.
Oh, top notch.
Yeah. So he brings his dude over, and dude's like, "Give me your current ID." So I hand him my current ID, and he just looks at it and goes, "That's fake." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And so that got me thinking, okay, what? Like, literally, this is who I thought I was. Mm-hmm. Who am I really?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And then the guy says, "Who do you want to be?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Well, you kind of look Canadian to me." And I'm like, "Okay, I could be Canadian. Yeah,
okay.
I like Canadians."
All right. Yeah. Okay.
So that was kind of encapsulating the first very weird dream.
So that's a dream about identity for sure.
It is. It really kind of illustrated the whole external locus of identity that we all have, which is when we're born, we're told who we are.
Right.
And then we just buy into that for the rest of our lives. We never go back and think, wait a minute, is that really who I am?
Well, I think it's what my friend Krista Rose calls an efficiency, right? We do it because it's efficient to buy in. But it's only, interestingly enough, it's you get diminishing returns over time because it's very efficient to, well, you got to give a baby a name, right? Because how else are you going to call the baby? There's got to be something, some distinguishing mouth noise.
Sure.
That baby will understand means, oh, that's for me to get my attention, for me to come over here or whatever, right? Like you have to have that. And that's my mouth noise that distinguishes me from other children and from other people. And oh, these other people, if I need them, mommy and daddy, they have their own mouth noises, and that, so it's very efficient, right? But it's only efficient up to a point. And I think that this is something I think that's been known for a very long time, because in a great many cultures, indigenous cultures, sort of these cultures that were of the oral tradition and lasted a long time, you would have your child name, but then as an adult, it would either be that you chose your name or that the society would choose a name once you had passed a certain rite of passage.
Yep.
And then, of course, you have professional names. You have, people will re-choose a name after moving beyond even another sort of level of mastery, right? So you have this is very common in martial arts, in shamanism, in religious practice, right? All of these things that you would military, a nom de guerre, right? So these are the war names, which we've talked about a little bit on that. Very common in Islam, very very common part of that culture, right? Which really it's the Arabic tribal culture, right? That you pick these names, and so I've had DJ names. Obviously, Vin Armani is a stage name, but it's like, there's something too. I am appreciative of. So, I certainly have my birth name. The last 10 years, I've had Vin Armani as an identity, and then even before that, I had another identity that carried me sort of through. It was like a DJ name but then it was within that scene, and also, through some portion of, I carried that name. I didn't use my birth name. Enough people knew me as one thing, and it was like, why do I have two names, blah blah blah. It's kind of the same thing with Vin Armani at this point. And I have to tell you that there is something very valuable to, at certain times in your life, as ridiculous, I mean, how ridiculous of a name. I've told the story a few times, and I won't tell it again tonight, but maybe I'll tell it sometime, of how I just wound up with the name Vin Armani, right? But it's like, even if the name is ridiculous, even if the And maybe it should be ridiculous, right? Because the value is in recreating your identity, And
Yep.
I think that that's what really helps to having those moments where you recreate your identity really helps to frame your idea of what is reality in the first place, and can I craft my own?
Yeah, and that is essentially what I received out of the dream was everyone has the opportunity to recreate themselves into whatever form they want, to any person they want to be. Don't buy into, I've been, John Smith for my entire life, and I have to be John Smith until the day I die. You can literally become, oh, I don't know why Burt Reynolds just popped in my head. Don't be him.
Didn't he just die?
He did.
Yeah. Okay. That's probably
Be somebody
why.
who's alive.
Right.
But, you can redefine. You don't have to go just by what the world says. No matter if the world is, your parents or your siblings or whoever, you don't have to go by what they say. You can be whoever it is that you want to be, and make that choice. Just like, you're talking about the, some indigenous people that have a ceremony where, you become an adult and you have the opportunity to choose your own name. I think we need more of that. We need more of that in society. I certainly needed that apparently, because that's what I dreamed about last night. I think that exercise, that mental and emotional exercise, spiritual exercise of redefining yourself on your own terms, super critically important for people.
See, I think that there is some of that, but it's the trappings of it in the online handle. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I think that it is the trappings of it because it isn't a full identity.
Right.
Right. So you have people who inhabit this identity for a period of time when they're in this particular environment. The people who really have gone all in, and it's not just like, oh, I needed a handle for my Twitter, but I still go by this name. The people who don't have a profile picture, who are anons or whatever, who are embracing this personality, maybe if it's a personality completely different than their own.
Sure.
That's almost, though, that's the trappings of it, I feel. Because I think that we do have, clearly, we must have some sort of natural impulse toward that redefining of ourselves. Well, no, we do have that. I think we understand that, right? Like we try to, as adolescents, break away from our parents, define ourselves, have individuation, have all of these things.
But how many of those people change their name?
See, this is what's important, is that it is, I think that the changing of the name, I know for me, because and it was basically at that point, like my college friends around, so how old was I? I mean, I was probably 18, and they gave me this name. And the thing is, we all gave each other names. And we are all performers and artists, and those names stuck. Like with all of us, those names stuck. And the other thing is, that's all we called each other.
Yeah.
So we made a decision to call each other that. And like you've met my mother, she was here, and you got a chance to hang out, and she calls me by my birth name, and I'm 2 names away from my birth name. It does not I know that I am not that person. It's a very weird, that changing of a name, I think, is very, very important in order to be able to redefine yourself, to recast yourself as something new, as a new character.
Yeah.
And to decide, because at a certain point, if you try to live inside the box that is this image, or especially of our parents, our peer group at an early age, you're not that person. You're not that person.
Yeah.
And it's crucial, man. It's going ahead and defining who you're going to be. And who's to say that you aren't that person? You're that person if you decide to be. That's how I look at it.
Absolutely. But then think about, in today's age, right? There was a time when you could, like you did, just redefine yourself, take on a new name, redefine yourself completely.
It was a lot easier before. So this would have been mid-90s.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really an online social graph. The internet was still a relatively like anonymous place.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there was no permanent record of everything.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And that's the trouble that people today will have is when they try to redefine themselves, when they do grow and mature and change their views and things like that, they'll still be judged by stupid things they wrote online 20 years ago.
Oh, but it's happening now where people are losing gigs, they're losing jobs, and all of it. They're losing, positions of power because of something that somebody digs up a tweet, from 8 years ago, or something that a blog post that somebody wrote on that no one had read.
Yep.
And, it does not give people the space to grow. And it's so weird that our culture is at a place where that is deemed okay, where it's deemed okay to say, oh yeah, who this person was 10 years ago, when they were, 22 years old and now they're 32, or even they were 32 and now they're 42. Like, who this person was then and who they are now is the same person, and they should be judged accordingly.
By today's standards.
Right. Yeah, that's even more important.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that we were talking about even before the show, where it was like our memories, our cultural memory, as things speed up faster and faster, our cultural memory is getting shorter and shorter.
Absolutely.
But maybe that's because our consciousness it doesn't have the bandwidth to keep pace with change.
Yeah.
Right? Our cultural bandwidth for cultural memory.
Definitely. I recall living in the South and walking through the grocery store, smoking a cigarette, and this wasn't that long ago. This is within relatively recent memory, 10, 15 years maybe. That would be fundamentally shocking to anybody under 20 years old at this point.
Right.
They'd be like, oh my God, what is that guy doing? Somebody arrest him.
Right.
But it was normal. And, there were a lot of, social things that happened. Like if you go back and watch, commercials from 20 years ago, like the What's Up, you watch commercials from that era and you see a lot of stereotypes and a lot of verbiage that would be completely unacceptable today.
Well, look what The Simpsons is going through with like the Abu character all of that, where it's like, all of a sudden it's like, The Simpsons is completely like racially insensitive. That was never the issue.
Yep.
Like there were issues with The Simpsons. There were lots of issues with The Simpsons. I remember when it first came out that it was crass and all. Race was never a part of what is wrong with The Simpsons, what is wrong with The Simpsons narrative. It was never had to do, and it's not even race, but it's like cultural. It's like a lack of cultural sensitivity to where it's like, this Abu character, this, he's either Indian or Pakistani. I don't know. We never really know, but likely Indian. He owns the Quickie Mart. And it's like, that is a stereotype. But I will say, right next to my office, there is a little, like a Quickie Mart. It's the closest thing right across the way, and walk in, and yeah, I was in there today. The owner is Indian. His wife was working there today. She was in the full Indian getup. You know what I mean? The sari and everything, like traditional dress.
Yeah.
And she's watching Indian TV in the background, and it's like, this is actually still a reality. Like, but what do you want to do?
And the thing is, one way to interpret that is awesome. Like there's a lot of Indian people who have come here and maximized the benefits of a capitalist society.
Oh, are you kidding me? It's fucking fantastic.
Yeah, they've really done everything they can do to fulfill the American dream. That was the dream of America, right? It wasn't build walls. It wasn't keep people out. It was bring everybody in and let everybody compete. And, hey, the Indians are doing pretty darn well.
Yep.
Yep. So that whole, stereotype, I never viewed it as negative. because
and that's the thing. I don't think it is negative. Like,
I certainly don't think they intended it that way.
Here we are. We're in Nashua, New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. We can drive to the nearest sort of quickie mart, like liquor store, stop and rob, right down the street. And I go there. I know the guy who's working at the counter is going to be Indian. Mm-hmm. When you look behind, you're going to see pictures of his guru, mm-hmm. like 4 of them, a little altar. Every once in a while, he's going to have he's going to put the dot on for the holiday celebrations. And it's like but no matter where you go in America, that's going to be the case. Mm-hmm. It's just like if they had a nail salon in The Simpsons and it was a Vietnamese character that was there, because the idea of The Simpsons is that's the reason why it's called Springfield, is because there's a Springfield in every state. The idea of The Simpsons is that it's supposed to be an amalgamation of all the things that make this culture, that are just the day-to-day mundane things that we will all see.
Yeah.
And it's like, so what do you want to do? Like, to be upset about the Abu thing, but what do you want to do? Because that's reality. Mm-hmm. Everywhere in America. So what do you want? It can't be an Indian guy. Why can't it be an Indian guy that owns that business? Who should own that business?
Yeah. It's that is an unanswerable question, mm-hmm. honestly, in today's climate, mm-hmm. right? Cultural appropriation, also a major current issue, and I've got a picture.
Yeah, that's so weird. The cultural appropriation.
Well, it is such a trap too, because mm-hmm. I have a picture on my Facebook where many years ago at work, an Indian friend of mine, a super cool guy, very very smart, and he invited a bunch of us to take part in their Holi celebration.
Yeah, Holi.
H-O-L-I.
Sure. Yeah.
It's basically where you put on all white
and
then you throw paint
at each other. Yeah,
it's phenomenally fun.
It's super fun. Yeah,
it's great. So then there's pictures of like the whole big group of us. There's white guys, or there's the guys and girls. So it's not just all guys,
sure, right?
Even though it was technology, so it was mostly guys.
Fair enough.
But there was a big group of us. Only a couple of them are actually Indian.
Right.
And we're all dressed in white. We're all covered in paint. And it's like, would that now be considered cultural appropriation?
Absolutely.
But we were invited to do it by an Indian guy.
No, because you're supposed to stay in your box.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that when that one is allowed to take place, I feel like there are a couple of what would you say? There are a couple of fatal exploits in terms of memes that you never want to get in. There are a few fatal exploits that you must at all costs keep out, because it basically means the destruction of your civilization. And the idea that there is such a thing as cultural appropriation and that it should be looked at negatively is, you must keep that out. Because if you don't keep that out, your culture is doomed. Because the only thing that allows, and this is what this is the last third of my book, Self-Ownership. The only way that, our culture is a tool. Our culture is protecting us from what's out there. Our culture is protecting us from all the terrible shit that killed our ancestors. Nobody listening to this and us will ever have to worry about, we don't walk outside and think, oh, I better, have my weapon at the ready because there's a predator that will kill me. That was a real concern for our human ancestors.
Sure.
We don't have to be constantly on guard when we're walking around for the thought that at any time, down from out of the hills could come some barbarian horde that's going to kill us, rape our women, take our children as slaves, burn our houses to the ground. This was a real concern for our ancestors.
For a long time.
For a long time. We don't have to worry about some mysterious disease wiping out most of the population. That was a real concern for most of our ancestors that ever lived on this planet. Starvation, the elements, natural disasters, all of these things we are protected from by culture. What culture is at its core is culture is that which is protecting us from all of that terrible shit. It's a way for us to communicate with each other and to communicate the knowledge that we've accrued over time to protect ourselves so we never have to go through that terrible shit again. And the only way that culture is able to protect us in the way that it has is it evolves. And it evolves by the influence of other cultures. Every time, the influence of other cultures. Fucking pasta and tomatoes are not native to Italy. They're not.
I believe you.
Pasta's native to China, and tomatoes are native to the Americas. We know that. Potatoes are not native to Ireland. They're native to the Americas. How would the Irish have survived without fucking potatoes? You would have no Ireland without potatoes. You'd have no Italian food without tomatoes. But could you imagine if there was a meme in Italian culture that, oh no, that would be cultural appropriation. If we use tomatoes in our cooking, that's cultural appropriation. If we use noodles, my culture is not your side dish. It's cultural.
Wow.
Noodles is cultural appropriation, right? Well, there's no fucking Italian food.
Yeah.
There's no potatoes in Ireland.
There's no Corona on Cinco de Mayo.
Well, dude, there's no Cinco de Mayo in the United States, period. And it's not just that. It's so many things that we can't even imagine and understand.
Yeah.
And the influence that those things have, and it's not just cuisine, it's language, it's dress, it's medical technology, it's building materials,
It's behavior.
Yeah. It's all of these things. And that is one to say, no, we will not integrate any things from any other cultures. You are not allowed to do that. That is fatal.
Yep.
You're going to be back worried about predators, worried about diseases, worried about starving. Well, I mean, and it's been proven out. That's what happens in socialist countries.
Because when you keep the other cultures out, there's no more cooperation, and then it becomes competitive.
That's right.
And then people fight, and then you have, race wars.
Well, because there can be no appreciation of the savage. If there can be no point, if it's completely separate, if it's not okay to let any of that in, then all you have is okay. Well, now we have to duke it out because we can't have two. You either have assimilation or annihilation. Those are the only two options when cultures meet. That's it.
I feel like we reached a point of cultural integration, like the high point of cultural integration. God, I don't know how long ago this was, probably 20 years, where we had at one point in time, the best rapper in the world was white.
Oh, Eminem, sure.
Best golfer in the world
was black. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we're there.
Yeah.
We've achieved perfection.
Yeah.
And we've been on a downhill slide ever since.
I think you're right there. I think you're right. But I think a lot of it has to do with social media. It has to do with siloing. And it does, social media, you would think that it lends itself to greater mixing of cultures. It actually doesn't. The real world is what forces you to mix with cultures.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like exactly as we're talking about, if I don't want to patronize a business owned by an Indian guy who has pictures of his guru, who might have the little,
Bindi.
bindi on his head. I was going to call it a dot. That's inappropriate. See, I'm even that cultural. I should have just called it a dot. If he didn't, if I didn't want to see him with the bindi, I have to drive extra.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go farther. So I have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Is it worth it to be a racist? Right? Racism costs. Like Thomas Sowell says, prejudice is free. Discrimination has a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you just let the free market go to work, you're going to get less discrimination, because for most people, discriminating on the basis of race, sex, age, sexual orientation, etc., 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 is not worth it.
Right.
Because it carries a high economic cost.
Yep. And occasionally people will make the opposite choice. For example, there's an Indian guy that runs the subway near my house, and I specifically go to him. There is a closer subway, but I go to him because he makes better sandwiches.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Because sometimes there's a reason why there's a reason why it is the Indian community that's running the Stop and Robs. I mean, I had my first business mentor as an Indian guy. He's from Hong Kong. But he owned lots of property in LA, and I got to working for him with one of his hotel properties, and wound up sort of like being mentored by him, wound up as the GM of the property, and I was young and just learning a lot from him. But it's a work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
The way they approach their business is, oh no, this is my business and I'm here 24/7 if need be. Me and my family, his whole family was, working in all of his businesses. His son, his daughters, his nephew, his wife, himself, and it was like, and they brought me sort of into their family, and the expectation was that, like, hey, we're working, like this is what we do, like this is our project, and it's like it's a full-time 24/7. There's no like 9 to 5, 40 hours a week. No, that shit just no. If you may work 20 hours today,
yeah,
that's how it's gonna go. And it's like, yeah, well, that's what it takes to make a Stop and Rob profitable.
Well, and that's what it always took in the past.
Exactly.
In the past, when people were committed to making something successful, they would put in the 20-hour days.
That's right.
For years on end.
That's right.
And then it would be successful. Nowadays, people have this impression that, okay, I'm going to graduate college, which I've just paid $150,000 for, and then I'm going to be successful. But that's not how the real world works.
And it never has.
No, never.
It never has. I mean, it's been really a political experiment. Mm-hmm. And it's the same experiment that brought us the 40-hour work week is the same experiment that is bringing us the cultural appropriation narrative, that's bringing us a lot of things that have failed every time, but that sound very good to a child. Let's put it like that. It sounds very good to a child, and I think that this kind of brings it full circle, is that it sounds good to a child, and if you never grow up, if you never take on that new adult identity, you'll follow it through.
Yeah.
And you'll keep following. Like, I'm watching, it's crazy to watch a generation who has really fully bought into this thing, to the point where, like, the people who I know who are in their, let's say mid-20s to like early 30s at this point, who bought into the narrative, went off to school, took all these loans, did all of this, and they're like, even they're getting out and they're getting into their career, and they're like, I am never going to pay these loans off.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit. Like, and those are the ones who successfully traversed the path and actually made it into their career.
Yep.
That they intended. Not the ones who was like, oh, there's no jobs out here for me for the degree that I paid all this money for. I guess I'm going to go and work the job that I would have worked if I had no degree.
I can't tell you how many bartenders I've met with master's degrees.
Oh, sure.
They're everywhere.
Sure. And because the answer is, so I got my bachelor's, and but all I can find is a bartending degree. I guess I'll go back to school. I'll take another loan and go back to school.
Yep. It's crazy. This is absolutely crazy.
But it's you start to wonder, like, who does this all benefit?
Well,
is it the Silurians?
No, but that is an interesting thought, right? Like, who actually profits from this? Because somebody has to. Somebody has to be getting something.
There's got to be some value to continuing the narrative, unless it's got now it's just got momentum of its own.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like, well, it's it's a meme, so it could very well just be a virus.
Could be. I mean, like Social Security, for example, when it started, it was intended to give people a little bit of assistance at the very end of their life, because nobody was expected to live more than 5 years after they got on Social Security. Lifespans weren't that long. There just wasn't that much money in the system. There was not a 30-year retirement plan through Social Security.
Well, the question, but what were people doing? I think this is it's always interesting to ask, like, what were people doing before Social Security? Was there this mass of elderly people no longer wanting to or able to work who were like just dying in the streets? Is that what was happening?
So some people have that impression. I'm not an expert on this, and maybe by next week I will be.
That's kind of how you are.
It is. But I have heard from people when having, because topics like this tend to come up in the circles we run in.
Sure, of course.
And you talk to somebody who's maybe in their 70s, whatever, and they're like, before Social Security, old people were starving in the street. Is that true?
I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true.
I don't think it's true at all.
I'm sure it had happened. Somebody had starved in the street. They're doing it today.
Well, first off, more people were actually starving in the street at that time, like just people in general.
Yeah.
Starvation, like not being able to have enough food, was a completely or medical care was a completely different phenomenon. At that time, I mean, what year did Social Security start? Was it after the war or before? It's before the war, before World War II, right? So it's like, I'm thinking it's like early 40s, late 30s.
Okay,
is Social Security. So that's like, yeah, man, yeah. If you were poor, you were skinny.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
There were a lot more skinny people back then, and not just because they were poor, because they were more active. There was no internet. There was no video games. They actually had to go outside and play with a stick.
Well, no, I think some of it was just a lack of calories, like as compared to the number of calories and how inexpensive calories. Dude, calories are very inexpensive.
Oh yeah. So what is it, like the McDonald's cheeseburger, the $1 cheeseburger that's on the $1 menu is like
1,500 calories or something?
Oh, no, it's not. The big one is, but the little small one that they feed to kids is like 600 or 700 calories.
That's huge.
It's huge. I mean, that really could feed you for an entire day, easily. So,
well, that's the interesting thing. Like, it's shit calories is the problem, right? Like the calories, it's fine.
Yeah, it's nutritionally dense for the money, right?
Right.
I mean, you pay $1 and you get a whole lot of
and for
stuff.
what with inflation, for what $1 is worth as compared to other things, right?
Oh, yeah.
So like, you can't get a gallon of milk for $1.
No, you could just about forever. I mean, gallons of milk were like, or what was it? You would actually have quarts of milk delivered to your front door by a person for like 25 cents a piece.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So it's like,
so you've got massive inflation. You've got $1 that'll get you 700 calories. No one in our society is going to starve.
Yeah, they shouldn't.
It's almost impossible to starve. So in LA they do there's various sort of like food kitchens and whatever that'll do meals during the day. And like there's a population of homeless in LA that basically just travel. They just spend their day traveling from the place that does the breakfast to the place that does the lunch to the place that does the dinner. And some of these folks are morbidly obese.
Right. That was going to be my follow-up to your skinny comment was, and you flip that to today, and I don't even know if we probably shouldn't call them poor people. We should probably refer to them as economically disadvantaged or, something. But whatever, they're fat now.
Yeah. With cell phones.
And TVs and cable,
Xboxes.
Xbox, yeah.
Internet. Again, that's culture.
Yep.
That's culture doing that. That's culture constantly evolving and doing that. And when you say, no, culture, stop evolving, lock it down. You stay in your box. See, but that's a luxury. That's when you've reached a decadent age. You've reached a decadent age when it's like, no, you have a role to play. You play this role. You play this role. You play this role.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the weirdness of the Industrial Revolution creeping up. It's the celebration of, oh yeah, you can just work stamping out a widget for the rest of your days. We want you to stamp this widget out. We'll keep raising the wage on that. We're gonna unionize you. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be able to fire you. All you need to do is come in and stamp a widget. It's really, you don't get far. It doesn't take long until it's like, oh, I'm a widget stamper, identity. Oh, but now it's down to, it's because class is not going to work anymore. Because how do you define class? When nobody's starving anymore, what's the lowest class?
Yeah.
When I have the same phone that Joe Rogan and Elon Musk were just having a conversation. Both of those guys are clearly in the upper class, the highest class that there could possibly be. They're smoking weed. They're drinking whiskey, and you were like, oh, well, what whiskey is that? We could go and get that whiskey.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably right down the street.
They're broadcasting on YouTube, which we're broadcasting live on right now.
Right? I did notice, I think we have better microphones.
They've got pretty good microphones. He's got a pretty good audio setup. But I think that's the point that we're reaching, is that it's like we can't make class distinctions because you could go to the 1%. They're rocking the same phone that, some literally homeless person has.
Yeah.
It's where do we... Maybe it's a car, maybe it's these things, but like those are becoming a lot less important to people as well.
Right.
So those things that would otherwise be out of the reach of most individuals, and still, if you want to go drive a Lamborghini, you can go to Vegas and you could go to the little tracks that they have with the exotic cars, and you can drive a Ferrari, you can drive a Lamborghini.
Yeah. And
do you really want to do more than just drive it a couple of times? I don't want to be responsible for a Lambo. Seriously. I don't.
So in Tim Ferriss's first book, I don't know if you ever read that. So the 4-Hour Workweek, really good read. I don't know how, current that information is because the book is, I don't know, probably 10 years old.
10 years, yeah.
But his thing was, I'm stuck in a job and all I really want to do is drive, I forget if it was Lamborghini or Ferrari, whatever it was. It was some, really expensive sports car.
Probably Lamborghini. That's probably where when Lambo came from. It's probably all these people wanting Yeah, he launched a weird meme with that one. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No. He did. I mean, he completely changed the way a lot of people think about work. And it really boiled down to what's really the most important thing to you. And to him at the time, it was driving that car. And he's like, okay, it's going to cost me, I forget what it was, $2,500, $3,000 a month for the payment on the car. And he's like, so that's really all I have to make. Like, I got to make that and I got to eat.
Right.
Like, that's
all I care about.
Yeah. And when you start putting things in terms of what do I really genuinely care about, and then all you got to do is come up with X amount of dollars and not X plus, because you're not paying for, 15 other things. You're literally just paying for a car and some food. It makes those goals more achievable. But, then you could argue that he's focused on the wrong thing, whatever. But
the question is there a wrong thing? Like, I'm not
so.
sure that there's a wrong thing. Anything that gives you meaning that's the right thing.
For you, yeah, absolutely.
And at the end of the day, that's what makes the world go round. Could you imagine a world where everybody is satisfied that they are in pursuit of that which gives them meaning? I'm reading this book. It was written in 95, I think. David Mamet, 3 Uses of the Knife. It's a short. I've read it probably 6 or 7 times now. What's crazy, and it's a terribly short book. It's probably 100 pages, but it's dense, which is what I like. Right, good philosophy book. So the title is 3 Uses of the Knife on the Nature and Purpose of Drama. So this was the book when I first read it that introduced me to Joseph Campbell. But I've gone back to it several times, and I've also given it away quite a few times because I had to go and rebuy it. But I recently, because I took Twitter off of my phone, I took Instagram off of my phone, I took Facebook, my Facebook page off of my phone, so that because I found myself getting involved in this drama, and it was funny that people were like, and it's Bitcoin drama, and it's like a Bitcoin store of drama. People would say all of this. And I was like, oh, no, but David Mamet. But what was so weird was I could not remember what was in the book. And I'm like, I've read this book like 6 times. Why can I not remember? And I'm rereading it now, and I'm realizing that it's like, well, first off, David Mamet is like, I mean, he's an award-winning playwright. And it's like what he writes is, it hits you to the core, and it's like it's communicated it's so perfectly communicated that it almost is communicated in the same way that like a psychedelic experience communicates something, to where I find myself getting all of the meaning and yet then being like, what did I just read? And wanting to go back and but it's weird because he's even expressing that. It's so meta because he's even expressing that, like, oh, that which speaks to the conscious mind is not even art in the first place. He's saying that in the book.
Wow.
He's like, if it speaks to your conscious mind, it's not even art.
Right. See, I've seen that. Okay, so over the past 5 years-ish, I was always somebody who appreciated art that looked like things.
Right.
Like, if you painted a really awesome, like, scenery, like landscape kind of thing, I'd go, wow, that looks really great. Over the past 5 years, I've developed an appreciation for abstract art that doesn't really look like much of anything, but it moves you, right? And so
that's
I'm just
drama.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I'll go to someplace and I'll look at something abstract, and either I will hate it, or I'll think it's interesting, or I will absolutely love it. But it's always from an emotional standpoint, you know? And that's the thing. I'm always having an emotional reaction. I'm never like appreciating like the technical detail that went into every little thing. No, I'm only focused on, am I repulsed by this image? Am I drawn to this image? What is it making me feel? And I had never experienced that from, paintings and visual art forms like that. And I think that's exactly what he's talking about.
It's higher bandwidth is what it is. Like it's that sort of conscious being able to like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. That is the lowest level of bandwidth that the human consciousness can communicate at. Right. So also my experience with ayahuasca, with mushrooms, with LSD, with mescaline, with all of these, going into this state, especially with ayahuasca, is coming back. It's having that same experience. It's like coming back and saying, holy crap, I understand every single thing that was communicated to me. It was deep. I think that I can embody it in my life. I feel like I can embody this in my life. I feel like I know that it's changed me. like, I know that on some level I'm going to react to the world in a different way, which is what I wanted in the first place. But what I also know is I will react to the world in a different way, but it may take me years to articulate how I'm acting differently.
Sure.
That is what I think great art does. I think that when you have that moment, right? And I've had it too. Whether it's with something that I've read, whether it's with art that I've seen, whether it's with a film, whether it's with a piece of music, you know that you're going to be different after.
Right.
I think that's what that emotional, that moment is, right? Is that you're like, oh shit, like I just leveled up. Really?
No, it's funny, but that's exactly what it is.
You're like, oh, I just leveled up. I'm a different person.
Yeah.
And, it's why it's why I'm like, yeah, this is a super short book, but it's taking me so long to move through this Mammoth book. And I remember that it took me, the first time I read it, I think it took me about a month of reading this thing every day because I'd read like 2 pages a day.
Yeah.
Like I'd have to put it down after 2 pages and be like, okay, that just changed. That was a level up. Like every 2 pages is a level up.
Wow.
Right? Because what he's saying is that like, what is drama? We are dramatists. Like this is drama.
Oh yeah.
It's the reason why all of this, it's the reason why people are tuning in is because there's a drama here. It's this idea of we're going to move through some idea. And it's going to mean something. And at the end, afterwards, there's going to be some level of catharsis. Or not. Maybe it's a cliffhanger.
Maybe there's a part 2.
Maybe there's a part 2, right? It's because we've done that too. Like, but that's drama too, to where it's like, oh, I didn't know there could be a part 2. Sure. I didn't know they could just leave me hanging. I thought that they were going to wrap it up after 2 hours.
No, folks, we have no idea where we're going.
Or that we don't even get to the topic, which you may notice that we've been an hour and we haven't, because that can happen too.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly how life is.
It is how life is. And in order to be prepared for life, you have to be prepared to go in many different directions, rediscover yourself along the way, take in input from all different people, all different cultures, and integrate it into yourself and not be afraid of celebrating something or appreciating somebody or some culture because of what society might think.
Well, what's weird is, what does society really think? This is what it's been about a week now that I made 2 decisions. I made 2 decisions on social media. One was no longer responding on Twitter. Right? I'll like things. On occasion, if it's something like I retweeted they made an account for Ross Ulbricht recently. And now he's got this petition. If you haven't signed Ross Ulbricht's petition for clemency, I think they're going to try to present it to Trump. I think it's got like 75,000 signatures. They're trying to get it to 200,000. If you haven't signed it, go sign it. So obviously I was already following the Free Ross Twitter, which I'm sure you are. I know you are because I've seen the people that you're following. And most of the people in the Free State obviously are. A lot of Bitcoiners are. But this as well is something. So I will retweet. So he's been sending either by phone or by writing letters, but he had been on lockdown, and the prison that he's in had been on lockdown, so he'd been in basically, sitting in this cell for days on end. And so I retweeted that, and then I retweeted something of his more recently. Those I'll retweet, but I've decided no more replies because I was replying to people. And what I realized was, like, there is so much more commitment on my end to, I had been replying to people, and I had been replying, and it matters to me. Like, my ideals and what I'm doing with my life and why I'm doing it matters. And so, like, if somebody asks a question about that, or it seems like they want some level of clarity, or even they have some sort of a criticism, I'm taking that in, but I'm also going to push back against it, right? To see like, well, maybe am I wrong? Like, perhaps I could be. Change my mind. Like, I'll debate you for a little while, change my mind. But what I realize is like, oh no, like there's no commitment on the part of these people. To them, it's melodrama.
Right.
To them, it's a way, it's the latest summer blockbuster. It's a way to pass the time. Like, to me, this is my life. To them, this is what keeps them occupied when they're in their cubicle.
Right.
And that's not like, oh, well, that's just taking my energy. And what's so weird is like in the last week, it's been like 10x productivity from me and happiness.
Yeah.
Because there is a drama. Like we are in a greater drama. And I have to thank you, because I think part of it is this show helps me to be grounded and to be like, oh, well, what's actually important? Here are these things that are like have a greater meaning to my reality, and I walk away sort of more fulfilled, and I understand more, and there's actually some nutritional value in the conversation.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not just a fucking McDonald's hamburger, which is what most of the conversations on Twitter and what all of fucking Instagram is junk food. Right? And Facebook the same way.
Yeah.
It's junk food. And to be able to step away, to have something that's grounded, and to say what drama, what role do you really want to play? Because there's drama everywhere. We're going to dramatize. We fucking dramatize the weather.
Yeah. I mean, every time there's a snowstorm, every time there's a thunderstorm, I mean, there's they're paging people in the middle of the night to do a live report because there's a thunderstorm. It's ridiculous. The melodrama is the noise.
It's the noise. And drama is...
quality drama is the signal.
And so you have to decide, like, is this play that I'm in right now and the role that I'm playing, am I playing a role in a melodrama, or am I really enacting a role in the big drama? And I think that goes right back full circle to choosing your name. Because I think, or choosing it doesn't necessarily have to be your name, but it could be a brand. It could be but something that is this identity that you are going to be known for, that is not just simply a mouth noise that distinguishes you from other individuals.
Yeah, the question in the dream was, who do you want to be?
Right.
It wasn't what do you want your name to be. It was, who do you want to be?
Right.
And that was the question that kind of haunted me until the next dream happened.
And which was?
The next dream. So I found myself in a, almost like I was in front of a television and there was a Netflix-like interface. And I was flipping between, like, let's see, do I want to watch that or do I want to watch that? And then I clicked on one, and then I became one of the characters inside.
It's kind of like a
show.
Ready Player One type of situation.
Yeah, it was super weird. And that led me to think about, what is this all, one, obviously we could tie this into the simulation hypothesis, but, or simulation theory. But other than that, we could also say that is part of defining who you are, because you do have a lot of choices. You could be anyone.
That's right.
And who you choose to be could be as simple as, making a conscious choice or making a choice that moves you emotionally so that it's a more fundamental, more deeper choice. And, you and I both have been going through a lot of life changes over the past
absolutely.
month or so.
And it sounds like a very similar sort of mental pathway.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that idea of choosing it's funny because that was a tweet that I put up today, because now I'm just only tweeting, right? Like I will maybe do 1 or 2 tweets a day. If I have if I get into I'm almost always in the gym in the morning, but that's like my church, you know what I mean? And usually what will happen is like something will formulate throughout that workout, right? Have the headphones on, have some music, especially if like, because I'm constantly on SoundCloud with brand new music. So it's like if somebody's, and I love that. That's one of the social networks that I think is like one of the most powerful. That, you know, I follow these artists and they're able to they're following artists and they're sort of reposting people that they like. And you get this, you can tap into a certain vibe and you get these artists who are either making music or reposting people, and it's like a day old, right? It's it's literally brand new. And you know, as a DJ, I mean, I've been a DJ and I got to start doing mixtapes again, but it's like that's one of the things that I've loved so much about that is getting that was always the love and the joy for me, especially with electronic music. Getting into it in the early days of like the record stores was going every week and buying brand new vinyl that had just come out and being, you know, going and listening to all the things and listening to the culture evolve itself over time.
Yep.
And mixing it together and mixing and seeing that, wow, this person who's from, you know, Africa and this person who's from UK, and then the next song is an artist from the US, and it's like blending these things together into this seamless story where it's like, no, but there's this culture that's carrying through. Yep. And you know, that is always, and then getting into the gym and like getting those endorphins going and the testosterone flowing is like, that's always motivated me. But this tweet today, it was literally this morning, was, you know, about is a quote from this David Mamet book, and then, you know, Bitcoin is drama, but the choice that you have is not about whether there's going to be drama or there's not. There's drama.
Yeah.
The choice that you have is it's drama played out on many stages. Which play are you going to be involved in, and what role are you going to take?
Yeah.
That's your choice. That's your choice. But I think it's not just Bitcoin, obviously. That's a principle. That's life.
All the world's a stage, and we are merely players.
We're merely players. The other part about that is, see, I think that there's a very sort of mechanistic and deterministic view in the original. It's a very sort of nihilistic and fatalist view that, oh, well, you're just playing your role on this stage. I don't think it's that.
I don't either.
I think we get to choose our role.
We do. Yep.
And I think that the real art form is learning how to know when you're in the right play and how to calibrate the role that you're in. First to see, maybe you don't always get to choose what role you play, but I think you get to choose the play.
You definitely have choices. And
there are choices. Let's say
there are choices, and I don't think people maximize their choices. I think people get stuck on their. It's like when you know, if you ride horses, a well-trained horse, you can take a horse and you can literally strap it to a chair or something that it could easily just walk away.
Sure,
but it views itself as being tied to that thing. And
it's a fucking horse. You think if it really wanted a way that it couldn't turn around and kick that post down in a heartbeat, it could.
Absolutely. And you know, when you have you could literally just lay the strap over top.
Yeah, exactly.
Of the hitching post, and it thinks it's there. People are like that. People are very much like that, and people do it to themselves. Nobody is tying you to anything. You're tying yourself, and getting to the point where you recognize that my barriers have all been self-imposed, and I'm going to pick a different path, and I'm going to choose a different, character to play. It can be scary, but it also could be transformative. and give people a new way to experience whatever this is.
Well, and it also, the other thing about it is it benefits everyone, because you are going to be a much bigger benefit to society playing the role that is right for you, as opposed to, playing a role even in the wrong play. Like, I think that there's something to, the casting director is an unappreciated. If you watch a great movie,
Yeah.
especially when you have a standout character as either the villain or a supporting character, when they're like, oh, wow, this person, they were a supporting character, but they stole the show. That's great casting.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
great casting. When somebody says, oh, this character here was made for you, and that person plays it to a T. That person really was made for that character.
Yeah.
And that's so important. It's so important for it to be everybody. For you to be playing whatever role it is that resonates with you. And the other part about it is that it's one thing that I love about the idea of the Marvel movies.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much there in terms of Marvel. I was always a huge fan of Marvel in particular. Growing up, I had this great comic book store next to me. I was into the role playing games, of course, and they had that section. But I would always go in every month, and there were certain comics that I always got, and I was like all about Marvel. But I was also all about. There was a period where they made them small, and then they made them large, like they sort of collected them together, and I had them all. It was almost like an encyclopedia. I wish I still had these because I'm sure they're worth a ton. But it was like an encyclopedia of the characters in all of the Marvel universe almost. I forget what these books were called.
Oh, you know what? I've seen those. They do those from time to time.
They were doing them, and so this would have been like probably 1989, 1990, probably.
But it basically summarizes like everything about that character in one.
Yeah, it's
place.
how strong they were, what their history was.
Yeah,
It basically tells their history. It has some pictures from out of certain books, and like it'll run through the sort of history of when they first appearance and this and whatever. And it even had some villains that had only been in like one book, you know what I mean? And all of these, I would love going through those and looking. And there's something about the way that even that sort of Stan Lee's mindset was there at that point, that it's like, no, we really are creating a universe here. We really are creating a reality. But one of the things that I love about it is how willing they were when a character, and again, these are created characters. When a created character that was a part of a group, an ensemble at first, would somehow manifest themselves as this, not just a one, because they all start out as one-dimensional characters. They've got a power, they're a hero, they're going to defeat the villain, and there are some super one-dimensional characters. I mean, I remember some of the experiments that they had were funny. They had a character called NFL Super Pro.
Oh, God.
I remember this in the early 90s. They took it super seriously, like NFL Super Pro. He was like a superhero football player. You know what I mean? It was like They had all kinds of weird things that they would experiment with.
Squirrel Girl.
Was that a Marvel character?
I don't know. I mean, she might have been DC. I don't know.
That sounds
real character.
That sounds more DC. To see the the one that sticks out, of course, is Wolverine.
One of my favorites. Love Wolverine.
I mean, I think one of the defining characters, but who was a part of X-Men, but clearly the most interesting character in out of that group.
Absolutely. He had the most depth,
But a supporting character. Because, I mean, if you go back to the early, it's really like, I mean, he's not the leader.
Mm-hmm.
What is he? He's the
anti-hero.
He is an anti-hero.
Yeah.
He's one step away from a villain.
Yeah.
That's always that he's riding the edge.
Yep.
But that's what gives him depth, because that's a real human being.
Right.
A real human being is one step away from a villain.
Yeah, that's a guy who is kind of pissed off all the time, and he understands the world is a messed up place, and sometimes you got to do a dirty job to make the right thing happen. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that means not being nice, and he definitely wasn't nice.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But he was also highly insecure.
Yeah.
And his story was a story of insecurity. Like, he was which was great, and I think that they laid that out, like the whole Omega Red thing. That was early 90s, probably about 1990, when they went into the whole thing about, like, oh yeah, the reason why he's got an adamantium skeleton and the reason why he's got those claws is because he had it's the story that's told in the movie The Wolverine, right? But that was told in the comic books. The Omega Red thing, that was told in like the 1990s. This whole idea that, here's this dude was abused, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He was kidnapped. He was an experiment. He doesn't want to be in this situation. Those aren't really his powers. Those are his curse, right? And with everybody else, it was like, oh, well, this is my biological curse from God. In his case, this was like, this is my curse from circumstance.
Right, because he had a biological, gift or curse from God.
Well, no, his biological is a real gift, right? The healing.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong. Actually, that's the greatest superpower. He has, actually, weirdly enough, the ultimate superpower, but it doesn't make him a weapon.
Right. And then the whole Weapon X program and, coating his bones with adamantium and all that. But wasn't there also a storyline, and we're getting deep into comic books here, but
no,
that's okay.
Well, to preface, I'm going to interrupt you, and then you're going to ask the question. To preface, the reason why we're getting into this is because this is, if you want to understand where the impetus for the Greek gods came from, this is our pantheon of gods. And that was actually my quote today. The David Mamet quote was, and then I said Bitcoin is drama, and the quote was, when we tire of Zeus, we spontaneously create the pantheon.
Ooh. I like
That's
that.
the quote from the book. Because
really
he's
good.
saying you cannot escape this impulse. You cannot escape it. When we tire of Zeus, we spontaneously create the pantheon. I believe that's what the Marvel comic books are. It is us tiring of Zeus.
Mm-hmm.
It's us leaving traditional culture, leaving the church, tiring of the magical Jesus who could do everything. We spontaneously create the pantheon.
Well, and the whole great thing about the pantheon was they were flawed.
And
they were flawed,
and
just
that's
like
what
we
we're
are.
talking about right now.
Yeah, and so
go on. You were going to ask a question of, wasn't there a storyline related to Wolverine?
But just to cap off the other thing, when you tire of perfection, then you want imperfection, and I think people have a craving for imperfection. So I believe there was a storyline where Wolverine actually started to view his healing as a curse because he wanted to die at some point. And he ended up being, ridiculously old, and couldn't die. And so therefore the healing factor became a curse.
Yeah. The curse of immortality.
Yeah.
It's, that I think the depth, that's the reason why we're doing the Marvel thing right now, I think. Because I do feel like there is, when they're done right, not every movie has been done right. Some are fantastic. Well, no, not some. At this point, all are fantastic in terms of the from a purely aesthetic standpoint.
Even the worst of the Marvel movies over the past 10 years since
Absolutely.
Iron Man 1
Absolutely.
are at least watchable and enjoyable on some level. But some are better than others, sure.
Yeah, they are, and I feel like it's when you get into the very human aspect. The problem is these stories, that Omega Red saga, which was drawn out in the Logan book and in the Logan movie, and then was the Wolverine? Was that a movie too? Am I am I confusing? I feel like but
there were several.
But those were all part of a single, the Omega Red saga, which we still have not. They have not done an Omega Red movie.
No, so the origin story that they gave was for him and his brother, Sabretooth.
Sabretooth, yeah.
And
that's still a part of this Omega Red saga.
Yeah, and so they had experimented on both of them, but only Logan was actually able to take the treatment. But yeah, so there was an origin story for Wolverine, which, I actually enjoyed the movie, but some of the effects are kind of crappy. And I thought it was a good origin story. Right,
but it's not the comic book origin story.
None of them really are.
Yeah,
I mean they have.
Because what I'm saying is they're too long.
Right, and also they change. Right, because you can look at different eras of comic book history,
right,
and you have different origin stories.
Yes,
and some of the differences are subtle, and some of the differences are really different, and to the point where it wouldn't make sense to pick one over another. So you kind of come up with an amalgam of, whatever origin story, like Wonder Woman, right? I know we're going to DC, but like Wonder Woman's origin story, she has several different origin stories depending on which comic book series you're reading, which time period.
See, and I feel like the early 90s was, and this goes back to the Simpsons idea, right? When I was falling in love with these, like, they were dark. And I mean, that was when the indie houses were coming out with Dark Horse and these others. And the first graphic novels were coming out. Batman had gotten fucking dark at that point. I mean, Batman was like a horror, was really horror comics to read at that time. But I feel like one of the things about that particular time was, I think, the lack of political correctness, right? So this is before the Monica Lewinsky scandal. So we're talking about like after the wall fell, before Monica Lewinsky, before Clarence Thomas. There was this period where shit really got exposed.
Yeah.
And I think that it was in the culture that the culture said, and I feel like that Trump's Make America Great Again, people say he wants to go back to the 50s. No, it's this period. It's the period after the wall fell, before Bill Clinton. There was, within the culture, there was this idea that we got it right. There was this sort of celebration of, no, actually, this is the right, correct culture. We won the Cold War. And there wasn't a new enemy, right? And I feel like that left open so much space for exploration of the culture, because I feel like when insecurity leaves is when the exploration of the shadow happens, right? When we're not, I've seen it in my own life, right? Gaining some celebrity in particular, where people will accept you being, well, it's the difference between being crazy and eccentric, right?
It totally is.
Well, eccentricity is an exploration of the shadow. What we're really talking about is we're talking about the shadow brought forth publicly to show these are my flaws. I am going to publicly expose my flaws. Now, when someone who is of a low social status publicly exposes their flaws, well, that person is crazy. But when someone who is of a high social status publicly exposes their flaws, that person is eccentric, and their eccentricity is celebrated. Just go and watch Joe Rogan's interview with Elon Musk and imagine if it wasn't Elon Musk. Imagine if you didn't know who this person was. You met them on the street, or imagine if I told you this guy, this individual, is a former heroin addict who's unemployed right now, couch surfing, and we're going to have a conversation. Now go listen to Elon Musk and see if you don't think that he's fucking batshit crazy.
Yeah.
But you listen to the guy who's shooting rockets into space, who's making Teslas, who's talking about the Boring Company, who's doing all of this, and then who's talking about his sort of dreams for the future. It's a different story.
Totally different.
Because he's got enough status. Well, I think Elon Musk has always exposed his shadow. I read his biography, and he's always exposed. I don't think he cannot. It's autism. He's on the spectrum, right? So he can't not do it.
Right.
You get that when, especially this is the most in-depth, like, non-staged, intimate conversation that I think has probably ever been had with Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And that Joe Rogan just did today. And he's clearly on the spectrum. There's no doubt about that. Which probably Howard Hughes was too.
I'm sure.
I mean, he wound up, stuck up in a hotel room for months at a time.
Well, but think about, the time period. Nobody had any idea what the spectrum was. I mean, it was just, people had mental issues, and there was no in-depth study of any of it. And we still don't really understand it. But we understand it slightly better. We understand how to deal with people who have spectrum disorders a little better.
But the question is it a disorder? I mean, even as Musk says in this interview, which is, I'm probably going to watch it about 20 times because there's things that happen in this interview that I've never seen actually happen in a Joe Rogan interview before.
Wow.
There's moments of like just silence where like Musk will say something and Rogan doesn't know what to say next.
Because it was completely off the wall, or?
I don't know that it's that. I think it's this simple expression of your own reality with no
reason to justify it in everybody else's reality.
Exactly.
I don't have to make my reality fit in with your reality, so I'm
right.
going to say whatever I want.
Right, and that's Rogan, where Rogan's just like, you're not giving me anything. Yeah. Like that's really what you get the silence. At one point he goes, and then he goes, I'm listening. Like it's almost where it's like, what do I do next? Help me out. We're supposed to be having a conversation. It's like, no, you invited me here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supposed to be having a conversation. I'm going to sit, or we're having a conversation, but you're going to have to keep up your end. Don't expect me to do all the heavy lifting.
Right.
But there's a point where he says, my Wikipedia page says that I'm a business magnate. I'm not. I'm just an engineer. I'm into engineering. I'm into building things.
Yep.
That's what I'm into doing.
Yeah.
And there's points, and especially early on while Joe is trying to get a handle, before they start getting more drunk and more high. There's a point in this interview. It's such a great interview. And even I haven't even watched even a third of it yet, but it's like there's a point where Joe realizes like, and it's the one thing that I dislike about Rogan, but he realizes and he lets go of it because Elon Musk is such a high status individual that it's like Joe Rogan doesn't expose his shadow. He doesn't expose his insecurities. He doesn't expose his weaknesses. He doesn't let himself fall off in front of the camera. And it's like, first off, you're not going to fall off because you're an absolute professional. Like, this is what you, it's not even professional. It's just like you're an expert.
Mm-hmm.
You're a master. You're not going to fall off.
Yeah. And even if you do, people will think it was intentional.
That's part of the play. Well, that's any great actor, right?
Yeah.
The audience doesn't know.
No.
Unless you trip yourself up, the audience has no idea. Unless you let them know, they don't know.
Right.
They think it was planned.
Yep. I remember competing in a guitar contest back in my hometown many, many years ago. And it was back when hair metal was still a thing. Mm-hmm. And so I had my, long Ozzy Osbourne hair.
Hair metal's still a thing.
It is. I love it. But, it's
still a thing.
So we all get up on stage, I don't know, probably 30, 40 guys. And so I get up there, I take my turn, I play my solo that I'd practiced for like weeks and weeks. And I messed up, like in the middle. Mm-hmm. And, kept going, finished it out, did the whole the show must go on kind of thing, right? Got done, got off stage, and got my score. And it wasn't a great score. I mean, I wasn't the greatest guitarist in the world. And I went to talk to a buddy of mine who I looked at kind of as a mentor because he was older than I was. He'd been playing guitar a lot longer, that kind of thing. And he's like, yeah, your only mistake was that when you made that error, you actually just went like, and shook your head. And like
right.
Everybody knew you made a mistake at that point. He's like, honestly, just listening to it, we wouldn't have been able to tell. But by seeing you like physically react, we all knew you messed up, and that probably lowered your score.
That's the tell. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, wow. So what I've found in life is that if you don't indicate that you think you screwed up, other people not only won't know, but in most cases, they won't even think anything's wrong at all. Like,
well, I think the true question is it a mess up if you don't acknowledge it as a mess up?
Did the tree make a sound when it fell in the forest?
I think it's deeper than that. I think it's something like, I'm trying to think of what's the profession where this probably happens the most, or the art form, and I would have to say it's probably cooking, where you will hear from someone that a recipe happened either because of a lack of an ingredient that they were expecting that they would have, or a mess up that they then felt like they had to fix. Either they cooked it too long, they got the temperature wrong, they burnt this thing over here, and then they had to make up for this and do whatever. But the final product turned out better than they could have expected, so they just continued to make the mistake.
Right.
To make the mistake. It also happens in certainly in music production all the time.
Yeah.
So the guy who basically invented dub reggae, Mad Professor, I had this pirate radio station in LA. I don't know if I've talked about it on this show before, but for several years, and there were quite a few legends who were involved with, weirdly enough, who were involved with the station, electronic music legends, who were either on at a certain time or who were hosts. Juan Atkins, who literally invented techno, like techno, Detroit techno. Techno is named after his song Techno City. So like maybe the person who like launched the rave scene was our drive time DJ, which is crazy to think about. But this is a pirate radio station, unlicensed, 87.9, went on for years. And I built this thing. But Mad Professor, who basically invented dub reggae, which is the electronic reggae, and a lot of the effects that are in electronic music, period. He was an electrical engineer as well as a sort of music. He wasn't really a musician, but he built all of his own. So you imagine that he built his mixers.
Yeah.
He built his delay and his so his delay was an actual string that a spring that he would hit. But he gave this great interview. I've got this interview somewhere and I have to find it because it's absolutely unbelievable. he was in my house with another legend, and of course we got so high beforehand. And you can hear me and this other guy, Scientist, who if people are into dub reggae, they'll know him too. He's like massive legend. But these guys worked with everybody, Bob and Lee Scratch Perry and all of them. But you know, he was talking about how so many of the things that had occurred were happenstance.
Yeah.
You know, these things that wound up in a track. He tells one story about working with Sade and things that ended up in a track that then you just continued to hear over and over and over and over again, but that were not on purpose at all.
Right. So the apparently the iconic drum sound of, like, you know, Miami Vice, the
It's
Genesis, Phil Collins.
Yes, it's called a What is that delay called? It's a total mistake.
Yes.
I'm forgetting what that particular delay is called, but it's an absolute mistake.
Right. There were two. That was one of them. The other one was that they had accidentally left the microphones that were at the very top of the studio on, and they never did that because nobody wants to record drums from that far away. You've got the drum mics are like literally right on the drums. These were placed like at the very top of the studio. They have never left them on before. They left them on accidentally. So between, you know, finding that delay setting and then finding the overhead microphone was on, and it's like, wait a minute, this sounds amazing. And it was literally the drum sound for like 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's been true in all of music recording. I mean, even you go back to Sam Phillips, Sun Records, basically rock and roll, right? So you could say that this is the person who invented rock. He certainly recorded the first rock and roll song, which was Rocket 88, which was like Turner's band at the time. And then Elvis Presley, Howlin' Wolf, you go down the line. And Sun Records the sound of Sun Records was this particular weird space that he was in. You know, but he was obsessed with audio recording.
Yep.
And such a great, I mean, his biography, I was listening, it was crazy because, so I had this art gallery and event space in Vegas, and we had some fucking fantastic music in there, and some artists of the sort of this generation of electronic music. We managed to get them in there, and it was really, really like kind of a quintessential space for the time that I had it. But while we were renovating it, I was listening on audiobook to this Sam Phillips biography, and it's like the story of this guy is really, it's really remarkable. White guy in the South, and as a young kid, poor family, had to go out and work in the cotton fields. And he went out and worked in the cotton fields. And, of course, there was white folks and black folks working together, you know, but it's poor white. You know, if you were poor, you went out, you worked the cotton fields. And he, you know, and then he heard them singing these songs, and he was like, what the fuck I've never heard this before. You know, he's probably like 12 starting to work, right? Which you can't do now, child labor. But
I was surprised he was that old.
Which is interesting that it's like, but Sam Phillips couldn't have been in the fields at age 12. That was the reason why he heard this music. And then when he got a little older, and then after work, they could go back, and he could actually, then that's when the old retired guys, no Social Security, right? So how did they get paid? Was after the workers were all done, and they would go and have some drinks, and then when he was like 14, 15, he was able to go with them and do that, black and white all together, right? And then they would go and they would have some drinks, and then the entertainment would show up, and it was usually an old black man with a guitar singing these songs, these songs that he had never heard in this style that he had never heard, and that was the blues.
Yeah.
And Sam Phillips, from that time, his obsession in life became, this can't die.
Yeah.
This, and it was like electronics was just new at the time to record this. His obsession became, these men are going to die, and these songs are going to die, and this music is going to die. That's moving me to my core.
Yep.
In my soul, and that's soul music. And so he was the one who recorded so much. He got it on the radio. It was all, and so that he started recording blues, and then with Howlin' Wolf and Ike Turner, and then obviously with Elvis Presley, and
who totally culturally appropriated all that black music.
Cultural appropriation, but we would not have. But that is American music.
Yeah, this is America.
All of this is America. There would be no This Is America. There would be no hip hop without Sam Phillips.
Yeah,
because nobody would have recorded that shit. There was not the capability for Black America to record their own music. It would have died.
Yeah, so it's funny. Well, it's not really funny, but it was funny the way it was presented in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Mm-hmm. So these guys all go into this radio station, which is run by a blind guy, right. And they're like, hey, we're going to record a song. He's like, okay, what kind of music do you do? And it's like, oh, we record Negro songs. And the guy's like, well, I don't record Negro songs. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the problem. Back in the day.
Well, they called it race music. They called it race music.
Well, that's not what they called it in the movie. I was just imitating the movie.
And so it was, it was resigned to like a very, even after he had started recording it, there was a few other people recording it. It was resigned to a very like select place kind of on the dial, this race music. He did so many things. I mean, recording and radio at the time were like combined with each other, obviously the same people, because it was electronics, right? He started a radio station and staffed it with all women in like the 50s.
I mean, obviously great idea, but why? Why did he? What was his motivation?
It was just the marketing of it. He was a marketing guy. He's like, I'm going to do an all women station. There were no women on the radio.
Yeah.
He was the first one, but there were no black folks on the radio.
Yeah. Wow.
And he was like, no, people want this. I can do it. But he built his whole studio. You know, the whole initial studio where he recorded Rocket 88, and you hear this sound that then became the sound that everybody emulated. Because at first, and I think that this is, you know, this goes to Rogan, this goes to Elon Musk, this goes to creating your own identity, and why it's so important that you create that identity for yourself is because everybody's looking for something to emulate.
Yeah. Well, how many truly original artists are there? There aren't. Everybody gets
well, even the thing that you think is original, when you hear it for the first time, it wasn't original. Like, that's the weird thing, is that, like, you know, even Sam Phillips. So Sam Phillips records Rocket 88. It's Ike Turner's band. I think Ike Turner's sick at the time, so he's playing piano on the track. I forget who's singing this song, but it's like,
it wasn't Tina at the time. It was somebody else.
Oh no! This is like a 18-year-old Ike Turner. You know what I mean? And his band. Wow. Yeah, okay. This is like young. early. It's not. I'm gonna look it up right now. Who's singing on it? But this is the first rock and roll song, and you could go listen to it. And what you will hear is that this is the drum beat that's carried through in all American dance music, all electronic dance music, all hip hop. Rocket 88. Let's see. Yeah, Ike Turner is playing piano. It's like a 4-piece band. Mm-hmm. It is.
Well, that probably defined what a a blues band makeup was going to be.
Well, it wasn't even. It was. See, it was. They thought themselves rhythm and blues. Okay. Right. But this is basically the first. So it's 1951. recorded in Memphis, Tennessee, March 3rd or 5th. Memphis Recording Service, which was Sam Phillips. It's Jackie Brenston and his Delta Cats. That's the name of the band.
Nice.
But it's Ike Turner is on. It was actually Ike Turner's band, but it was the Delta Cats. And for some reason he couldn't sing. They decided that it was going to be Jackie who sang Rocket 88, and that's it was a huge hit. That was the first. It's about a car.
Wow.
You know, you could say that was the first sort of black pop music, and it's funny how the dream. None of them had the Rocket 88. How the dream of the car, right? How the Lambo, how the Ferrari has carried through, like this meme. So there's 1951, right? That's the beginning of the meme.
But what did the car represent? The car actually represented freedom.
That's it.
Freedom of mobility, right? You no longer were just limited to how far you could walk at a reasonable time.
But not just being free in terms of your mobility of having the car. It's also having the latest and greatest.
Oh, sure.
Car.
Yeah.
So it's the new car. It looks great. The women want it.
Yep.
It's a representation of really of the hero.
Yeah.
It's the hero. It's the I've arrived. But it's more than I've arrived, because in many ways it's an invitation to adventure.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially because it's a car, right? Because not only are you hopping into the latest and greatest car with somebody who can afford the latest and greatest car, it's a status symbol. It's his chariot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, so he must be the greatest hero, the greatest warrior, whatever, because he has the best chariot.
Right.
And you can literally go wherever you want to go.
Well, it's the suit of armor. I mean, it's how you know the aristocracy on the battlefield in the ancient times was that they would have, because that suit of armor was the ancient technology. It was the idea that, that was, this is something that people, I think until you really sit down and think about it, and then it becomes very, very clear that, someone who was wealthy, who was a lord, who was the aristocracy, who had the suit of armor, who had the armored horse.
Yeah.
The peasants with their weaponry, they could kill each other. They couldn't kill him. He didn't even wade into the battle until another lord came in and started trying to kill his peasants. Then he would come in.
Right. Because then there was somebody worthy of battle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make sense for, anybody with any sense of honor to kill somebody who is that far beneath their skill level, right? So you're talking about an armored knight on a horse. They're a walking tank.
Exactly.
And, the unarmored peasants beating each other with sticks doesn't matter, because the dude is literally wearing a plate suit of armor with a massive sword.
That's right.
Or a battle axe.
That's right.
And he's going to wait for somebody to come along who is an actual threat, which will be another
because otherwise it's just like, it's dishonor. Mm-hmm. It's dishonor for him to wade into the guys with pitchforks and clubs, because that's what they were carrying.
Yeah.
Like, you would take to battle as a peasant whatever you had. You probably didn't have metal. Not much.
Oh, the only metal you would have might be farm tools.
Farm tools.
Potentially, yeah.
Maybe a scythe. You might take a scythe. You might have pitchforks. Like, that's what you're taking into battle.
Yeah.
If you are maybe like you have a little bit more, you might have a spear. But you don't have a good sword. You don't have a good shield. You don't have a good armor. You don't have it. You've got wood armor.
Yeah.
Cloth armor.
Leather, maybe.
Maybe you got a little bit of leather. Your arm's still getting chopped off if one of those knights comes in with a sharpened sword.
Oh, you're dead.
And armor, you're fucked.
Yeah. Your whole village is fucked.
You're fucked.
Yeah.
And so those guys just sat off.
Yep.
They played it's the game of chess.
Mm-hmm.
They played their pawns first. You're just a pawn. You're a pawn. They're well armored. And I think that's to bring it back, like that's really the point. You don't have to be a pawn. We're in a world where you don't have to be a pawn. You can choose your board to play on.
Yep.
There's a lot of people choosing boards where they're a pawn because, look, that night on the hill with the sun glinting off, the idea that you're going to win and the idea that if you don't die, that knight might come down off the hill and look at you for 1 second and say, "Good job." And then you're like, and that's going to sustain you for your whole life, and you're going to tell the story to your children, you know what I mean?
And they'll tell it to their children, and yeah, I mean, it was like,
when that's all you had, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But that's not all we have.
No, and Elon Musk is a perfect example of that. Because he literally refuses to exist in the same reality as everybody else, and that completely befuddles somebody like a Joe Rogan,
right?
Who just cannot handle that somebody else isn't living in the same reality.
Rogan. The thing is, Joe Rogan is a pop figure. He's that counter-cultural kind of pop figure that you need to have, right? He's a bridge. Elon Musk is a truly anachronistic, eccentric, and incredibly powerful individual.
Yeah.
Like the type of individual, the type of consciousness that doesn't come along very often.
But still deeply flawed.
Oh, incredibly flawed.
Yeah. So, I mean,
maybe more than most. Maybe more than most.
Well, I think a lot of your super geniuses, super genius. I think a lot of them are actually horrendously flawed, almost to the point of not being able to function in the real world the way that most other people do. And maybe that's a gift. Maybe because they can't function in the normal world, they choose to live outside it, and therefore are able to accomplish things that people who limit themselves to the real world can never accomplish.
Well, I think what the gift is realizing that you can't get put back in the Matrix. I think that's a lot of what I've been going through the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Is sort of it kind of sucks in some ways, but it's also kind of par for the course, and I think that it's probably the reason why I'm here in New Hampshire. Is like I would just rather prefer to just deal with free staters, because then I can just be me.
Yeah, I mean, we have our drama like everybody else.
Of course, yeah. but it's drama to a purpose. That's the weird thing about it, right? And the other part about it is, as I've realized, is that I think that we have a very good grasp on the fact that it actually is drama.
Sure.
That it's just drama. I think we have a pretty good grasp on that.
And I think that the people that are trolls know they're trolls and troll on purpose.
Exactly. This is exactly what I mean. It's that there is this there's a Vice magazine article that is really well written. I'm going to send you a link to it. If people want to look it up, I think it's called something like it's about the show Gigolos. I think it was written in maybe 2015, 2016, something like that. But it's called, if you Google Gigolos Vice, then Google man have sex with girl in cave or something like that. But
you realize that's not new. People have been doing that forever.
Right. This piece, though, it's a total troll piece. it goes after two of the people on the show, two of my co-stars. But the only thing they say about me is that they say that I'm in on the joke.
Yeah.
But I'm also notable for being an actual human being named Vin Armani, right? So they have to give me a troll.
Yeah.
That's fine. But what they start out with is in on the joke, which I found interesting, right? And then they proceed to demolish two of my co-stars who are not in on the joke.
Right.
And your demolishment goes to the degree that you're not in on the joke, to the degree that you believe Maya, the illusion, is reality.
Well, and who's to say that Vice magazine is the final arbiter of what the joke is?
Oh, they're not.
Right.
But I think that's the most interesting and meta part.
Right.
Is that, but actually, Vice magazine, you are actually the joke.
Yeah. And not only are they the joke, they don't even have any comprehension that there is a joke at that level.
Well, the interesting part about it is that the author of this might level the person he levels the criticism at is a co-star of my show, Nick Hawk, who is a ridiculous individual, but who I also love deeply to the core of my being, because without him there would not be the drama that was necessary for us to carry this on. But to look at, I guarantee you that Nick Hawk's bank account and his net worth would blow this, and his lifestyle and his experiences, as ridiculous as he is, would blow the author of this out of the water. I mean, this dude's he owns tons of real estate. I mean, yes, sure, he has a beautiful house that he remodeled himself by hand, which is interesting.
That is very interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
But that also has his Nick Hawk logo on the front of the house, much like Liberace. But, he's a character. He's a character, but all of the things, what's funny about him is he's told me many things that he wanted to do. And I think all of the things he's done, except one time he told me that he wanted to fight a bear in hand-to-hand combat.
Oh, like I did with Putin in my dream.
Fight an actual bear. And then I said, a bear would kill you instantly. And he said, no, a small baby bear. So I think he still hasn't figured that out. But he told me he wanted to swim with great white sharks, and he did it.
Okay.
Whether it's skydiving, whether it's helicopter skiing, whatever it is, this dude is living every single aspect of every dream that he's ever had. He's living it. And it's like, you can go ahead and tear him apart in this Vice magazine article, and it's brilliantly written, and it's your own piece of art. But this man has created his own reality from nothing. He's a kid from rural Wisconsin with no fucking education.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Went into the Air Force at a young age, drove out to LA in his pickup truck with his dog in the back, had no house, slept on the beach, you know what I mean? And is now fucking internationally known, does his thing, has his own, made his own name, his own character and all of this. And whatever you want to say about him, like, he's lived the life exactly that he wanted to live.
Which almost nobody can say. Yeah. So on a side note, interestingly enough, back in the very early 90s when I was in a hair metal band, we did frequent a particular location. We went back there and played a couple times a month. It was great. The people loved us. There was 2 weeks before we were coming, this one time in particular, 2 weeks before we were going to be there, or I'm sorry, reverse that. A week after we were going to be there was going to be Caesar the wrestling bear.
Oh, shit.
Yes. It was an actual trainer who brought his real live full-size bear.
And you could wrestle him?
But
did they take the claws off the bear?
They took his teeth out.
Oh, that's fucked up.
It's really fucked up.
Yeah.
It seemed really wacky at the time until I actually discovered, like, the bear had no teeth, which is sad. But I mean, that does offer him an opportunity to make his dream come true.
Now, here's what's interesting about this dude. His role was kind of the villain on our show. He made a great foil for the many competitions that we had that I always kicked his ass at. But he made a fantastic foil, and he played it so well. Honestly, right?
Yeah.
That would upset him. He also, there was an episode of the show where one of my other co-stars' dogs died. And in that episode, Nick Hawk cried. He cried, talking about the fact that this guy's dog died, and then we had a dog funeral and the whole nine. And he cried some real ass tears that shocked all of us. So I think he would be very upset. He's an animal lover. He would be very upset about. He might beat the ass of the guy. He also happens to be. He may be a black belt at this point. He was a brown belt last time I checked, but he competes in jiu-jitsu, so he'd probably kick the guy's ass who took the teeth out of the bear. So I don't know if you'd want to fuck with him. So
weirdly enough, the week after Caesar the Wrestling Bear,
yes,
were the Chippendales. Coincidence? I don't know. Maybe.
Everything is related. Everything
It
is so. We're like 3 minutes away from the end of the show.
I know. We're gonna have to change the title because
actually, we're not. This is the title, and we'll do part 2 next week. Because the first title is Destination Unknown.
It is, and this is just a continuing conversation. We throw titles out there because it might be something we talk about.
Maybe. Yeah. I think, when it's required that we talk about something else, it's going to flow wherever the hell it flows. So, Bitcoin Jerry, well, what did you think about the wine?
So the Coppola was very nice. I definitely like that.
Killed that.
This Benzinger, I had never heard of this until tonight. That is
Benzinger family.
It's pretty tasty. I'm digging it.
Yes, it's very good.
Yeah.
So if you want a 2014 cab,
you do.
I actually kind of prefer the Benzinger. I'm going to be honest, Francis. Sorry.
Well,
price
I will say
point's a little high on the Francis.
The Benzinger actually has a little more body.
It does. It's. I think it's better. I think they did a better job. It's cheaper too. But we didn't have to worry about what the cost was because our benefactor, Bitcoin Jerry French, thank you so much, Jerry, again. So we'll have to get together. I know I have your hand cash handle, but let's just make sure. Send you back a little bit. Maybe you could do the people from South Sudan, Eat BCH, hit me up. Maybe we could do a little something there. A little something in Venezuela could be good. Turkey could be good as well. We're good supporters of that. Yes, so we're going to do what is Silurian Hypothesis?
The Silurian Hypothesis, it's going to be a weird thing. It's really science-y, but we'll try to make it a little more interesting for our people. Tonight was definitely not super science-y, but it was fun, and that's what's important.
We got 2 hours, and I think there was something there.
There's a lot there. Are you kidding me?
I feel like there was something there, so that's good. Okay, so what I do want to tell people is iTunes. I know a lot of you are listening on iTunes because you hit me up when I don't immediately put this up on podcast. See, I did this on purpose. There's a method to my madness.
Indeed.
I wanted to see people say, "Oh, it's not showing up. The audio podcast is not showing up." Okay. Well, we don't ask anything of you. We've never asked anything.
Except wine. Send wine.
You can send. Yes, you can send wine. show@vinarmani.com. You can send wine. What we do ask is, if you are listening on iTunes and you like the show, just give us a review. If we get enough reviews, then that gets us on New and Notable, and then more people can listen to the show, and then more people can send us wine, and then we can do more shows, more inebriated. Actually, I just want to just keep trying wine.
Yeah, me too.
So what do we like? We like cabs.
We love cabs.
Tempraneos. Do not send a Merlot. We'll do a Pinot Noir. We'll do that if you really like it, but be
Zinfandel?
careful. We'll do. Okay.
Not like a no. Okay, to be clear, not like a pink Zin or
No.
a white
No,
Zin.
no, okay.
No. Actual Zinfandel.
An actual Zinfandel
It should
we will do.
look
Yes.
like this. This is what it should
Real
look like.
Real wine. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're done
brother.
for the evening. We'll see you again next Friday. Destination unknown.
Woo!